I'm in the middle of recording a Prey video at the moment, and I thought I'd take a quick break and explain something I'm guessing a few people are curious about, or possibly infuriated about. I seem to have a problem pressing certain keys when the game tells me to press those keys, and that's probably a little strange. And the reason for it is pretty simple. I don't use a standard keyboard when I game. Obviously I don't use a standard American keyboard because I live in Norway and I use a Norwegian keyboard, and that does have a few extra keys, but in actual fact when I game I use a one-handed keyboard called the Thrustmaster Tactical Board, and it doesn't actually have the keys on it. It's got lots of different labels for gaming. And generally what I do is I bind the keys in game to whatever I want on this keyboard, and then I generally forget what those binds are because I never think about key presses when I play a game. Now I know some people do. Some people actually think I'm going to press C to activate or something like I'm going to press space to jump. They actually think about the key. I mean, to be honest with you, that's a pretty alien concept for me. I actually think, okay, I'm going to activate and my thumb will press the required button without me having to tell it. That might sound strange if you are not like me, but it's basically the muscle memory. I just think go forward and I'm going forward. I think jump and I'm jumping. I never think about the key I'm pressing. I suspect a lot of you are actually the same, but you've never thought about it for very long. This means when the game says to me, press C, my brain's like, well, what? If it had said, press activate, I'd press it without thought. If it said, press sprint, I'd press it without thought. But when it says something like press shift or press control, obviously on my keyboard, those things are in completely different places to where they are on the normal keyboard because it's a gaming keyboard. And more importantly, they're not actually labelled. So even if I did look down at my keyboard, which I cannot do, and if you're wondering why, it's because I've got microphones in the way. The microphones actually obscure the view of my keyboard and my mouse quite a lot actually. I've done a setup video. You can go and see it, and you can actually see what it looks like to play a game for me because of these microphones. So basically, because I don't know where the keys are in relationship on this keyboard, when it says press such and such a key, it's completely useless to me. It would be better if it said press the map key or press the skills key or something like that. Although, to be honest, half the time I forget which keys are those anyway, but they're not important ones. So that is basically it. I also occasionally map some of my mouse buttons to certain keys like Alt and Tab, because this one-handed keyboard does not have a Tab key. But I don't think of them as Alt and Tab once I've bound them. Again, I don't really think of the buttons at all. In fact, when the game says something like press mouse 1, mouse 2, mouse 3, mouse 4, mouse 5, it takes a second or so for me to actually think about it. And mouse 4 and 5 I can never remember. I've got a lot of mouse buttons and I can never find 4 and 5. I have to even think mouse 2. If it said left click, right click or something like that, I'd do it without thinking, but it doesn't, obviously. It does something completely different. And that's it, essentially. When it tells me to press a key, I have to kind of look around my microphone, then look at my keyboard, which is within reach if I want to, and point at arm's length and press it, or quickly try and remember where on my one-handed keyboard it is and press that instead. And if you're playing a mini game where every second counts, it's a pain in the backside. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, why bother with this? Just go back to using a normal keyboard. I can't. If I try to play on... Well, I say I can't. If I did, I would have to find some way to alleviate the problem I have with tension in my arms. If I spend long periods playing on a normal keyboard because of the size of the keys, because they're quite small, and because the keyboard itself is quite long and it keeps my hands far apart. I say far apart. It keeps my hands at a keyboard distance apart. I end up getting tension in, well, my back, my shoulders, and my wrists, which cuts off blood to my hands. They get cold, they get stiff and painful. This one-handed keyboard allows me to have my hands quite close together almost as if they were in my lap, as if I was holding a gaming controller. And I find my posture is far better, I get a lot less tension, and generally I can play for longer periods, which of course is very, very important. I have looked into some alternatives, like keyboards that are far smaller, or one-handed keyboards that actually have normal key lettering on them, but they never feel right. The one I'm using is perfect for me. It's got large arrow keys at the center, and they are very, very comfortable for me to hold my hand completely relaxed. I can totally relax my hand on this keyboard and have the fingers on the arrow keys without trying. They actually rest there, and the keys are strong enough to hold my fingers up. I actually have to press down with force. There's no chance of me accidentally pressing it. So there you go. That's it. I'm using a weird keyboard because I'm an old man with tension problems in my wrists, and this keyboard does not tell me what those keys are, and I basically rely on muscle memory for everything when I play. If I have to engage my brain to try and figure out what to press, there's about a 1 or 2 second delay, which is forever in gaming. I hope that explained it. I'm sure it's not going to help it be any less infuriating, but at least you have some insight. Okay, thank you for listening to me ramble.